Hi everyone, welcome back to our show, All Things Autism and More. With me is Patricia, Claire, and I'm Irene, just in case this is your first time on this show. So today we are going to delve deeper into coping mechanisms once you've learned that your child is on the spectrum and has autism.
So, how do you cope with different situations in your life? We have said before, and we know that getting a diagnosis that your child has autism can be very overwhelming. It can be very stressful. It can trigger emotions, very strong emotions. Let's put it that way, right? Now we all cope differently with different emotions. We are all triggered differently by different things. Some people will eat, run away, hide, withdraw, project, get angry, shout, even deceive themselves that it's not existing. So today we want to go into, yes, all this has happened, but how do you cope? What is the best way to cope under these circumstances? Maybe not the best, we don't want to be prescriptive, but how do you cope in a constructive way to get the best outcome from a diagnosis and for your child, yourself, and the family? And today we'll do it a little differently. These two ladies are going to be generous, we're going to be vulnerable, we're going to open up. I will as well, but importantly, the experience is very, very important. So I will gently lead them on with some questions to get them to open up to us to share how did they cope. And then also, in hindsight, what would you tell that younger version of yourself to have coped better? Maybe Patricia, you'll start.
Really, shall I?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Welcome back, and welcome to those who are joining us for the first time. So the first time I learned about my son's diagnosis, he was just shy of 2 years old. I think what's important to note is that I had just finished doing the bar. So I had just finished a hectic time in my life and a time when I wasn't giving him maximum attention, so to speak. So I had a lot of mom guilt, and that was translated in how I coped with his diagnosis. We've spoken before about the guilt and the shame and the blaming oneself and stuff, but sometimes it can trickle just a little deeper inside, especially because when you go to the doctors, they're asking you what happened during your pregnancy or how has his life been. So I thought I had abused him and what. And I think if you've seen the episode just before this, I'm sure they'll put like a link below or something. I spoke about how I educated myself and all of that. And that was me trying to understand what the condition is. It was not easy to, I think when you talk about coping mechanisms, you're talking about the journey between finding out and possibly accepting, and then creating sort of like systems or tools that will help you through this lifelong journey, because autism is a condition that's lifelong. In which even when we help our children and we intervene and we give them, ways to help themselves and to be better and to learn more skills and ways of being independent, there's still that element of like the autism never disappears, so to speak. So I guess moving on from the teaching oneself, my faith, and not in the way you think, by the way.
Okay.
At first, it was quite dark. I first retreated from my faith.
Withdrew from
I
the
withdrew.
faith, yes.
I withdrew from the faith. Not the faith, but like I withdrew from God because I had a lot of the why me's, why this, why him.
Right.
When I finally understood the condition that I was dealing with, I sought out support groups. I was able to find a group on WhatsApp where I was warmly welcomed. I was actually before that, I started my own non-profit, right, which is Autism Awareness Uganda. And I started it thinking that, oh, there's no help out there for parents. And I'm very sure there are very many parents who have also started organizations because of the same thing. Like, there's no help out there for parents and people don't know how to deal with this thing. And in doing so, it sort of threw me into the world of autism in Uganda. So what that meant was I started to hear from parents that were affected by autism. I started to hear from groups and organizations that were working with people that have autism. And this was really helpful because it made it real. The thing about reading books and going on the internet is it makes the condition look like it's from another like outer space or in another country. But when you find a support group or when you find an organization or people who actually deal with autism in Uganda, then it gets closer to home. And it feels like, I have people who I can talk to and share with and open up about, this condition. And I'm a fast mover. So for me, the process of getting up and getting something, as soon as I got to that point where I was fed up, it was easy for me to move, which was not fully the case with my son's father. He had a lot of difficulty accepting or even just acknowledging. I think acknowledging and accepting are two different things, right? For him, his mourning period was much longer, which can be difficult.
Yeah, and we've said extend grace, but sometimes it's hard.
And it's one thing to tell somebody to extend grace. It's another. It feels very lonely when you're the only one, or seemingly the only one, because now when you talk about grace, you realize you actually were not the only one. But sometimes it feels like you're the only one who's doing something about something. But like we've said, all of us are different in the way that we process, for lack of a better word, trauma or bad news and stress. So that it felt like a very, very lonely journey. Getting that diagnosis, this is getting real. Getting that diagnosis kind of ripped us, ripped off the armor, and for lack of a better word, just made us very naked in our relationship. It just reveals who you are, reveals your ability to handle things together. Like when certain challenges, and many couples know this, especially married couples, when certain challenges come, they can be so enormous that they will either strengthen your bond, and if you decide as a couple to walk this journey together and do this work together, and that looks different, it doesn't always mean that it's 50-50, sometimes it's, but when you've made that decision that you're going to do it together, there's a bond that you create that cannot be broken. True. But then there's also the other side where you grow apart because you can no longer meet at a point of understanding. You have processed things separately, and you have understood the way forward separately and not together. And that's not even to make anyone afraid or to dishearten any couples and such, but where it's possible, I would really, really, and I'm speaking to the parents that are closing in and not communicating with their partners, it's really nice to just talk. Even if you're feeling extremely weak and helpless, tell your person, I can't deal. Like, I'm not yet there. I can see you're ahead, you're doing all these things, you're going finding speech therapists and all those other, good, nice things, but I'm not yet there. Communicate, at least let the other person know that it's not that you're not seeing them or that you're not going through this with them, but that you're just in a different, your velocity is different, right? I think that makes all the difference. I could really go on and on, but I think it's time to now.
I can sort of pick up from that of telling the person you're not there. So one of my children was born with a heart condition, a congenital heart defect, and that in itself is big. And I remember we went at it differently as well. My husband being very pragmatic, and I was So he was running ahead with certain things and coming to talk to me, and I told him, I'm not yet there. Where you are, I'm not yet there. Let me first process it and then talk to God. I think that's what the words I used.
Yeah.
So I think he realized, okay. So he went on and did his thing, and I went into that space, like you said, you're questioning God, but why? Why? But at the time we'd received the prognosis of her heart, the doctors, we were fortunate. The doctors had called us and sat us down and said, it can create challenges in your relationship. So be aware of that. So I kept that at the back of my mind. I don't know if any of the doctors ever said anything like that to you with the diagnosis they gave you, or if it's happening, and maybe it's a call to the medical practitioners to, once you give a diagnosis, don't leave it there. Tell people to be mindful. Emotions are going to creep up. Let them manage even themselves in the relationship. I think that helped me. But yes, Irene, let's hear from you.
Well, how did I cope? It was definitely difficult, very difficult in the beginning, very hard to take. And just so you know, when we got to know of his diagnosis, I had another young child. I had, because Sean and Yona are 1 year and 4 months apart. So you can imagine what I had to go through. So it's a whole process of denial, a process of why me, and in the process of the why me, there's this child screaming his lungs out in the house, and then you also end up being like the child. You also start screaming.
I know, let's go at each other.
You also start screaming, you're yelling, stop making noise, because it gets to you.
Because you didn't have an understanding of what was causing him. Yes.
It really gets to you. You're totally lost. You don't know what to do. I remember there was a time we had come from that department of speech therapy. He was screaming. This other child of mine was sick. He had a terrible cough. So we had to go to hospital. So one is screaming, the other one is sick. And I just sat in the car and cried. Like I cried. I was like, this is too much. And let's not forget, I also had my demanding job. I'm an accountant by profession. Accountants work long hours, for those who know. So there are also demands, like you're being pulled in every direction. And so it was really, really hard. It was so hard to cope. But then I sat down and reflected, and I was like, you know what, Irene? Crying is not going to solve this. You have to get on your feet and do something. Because crying won't give you the solution, but doing something will at least bring something out of it. I mean, there will be something to show out of it. So that is when we had started the speech therapy, or so we thought. We were doing the picture exchange, like I had mentioned in the earlier episodes. So, but it was only once every 2 weeks. You can imagine the demand that was there in Mulago. These were volunteers who were training the first speech therapists in Uganda. So I told them, guys, I'm very, very thankful for all you're telling me to do and to go back and do it back home. But I don't think this is enough. So why don't we work with one of your students? Give me your best student that I can work with back home, so that even when I'm busy on my job, I'll have somebody to support, to continue supporting the program. And I remember that time when they introduced this lady to me. She was a student, of course, back then. Right now, she's the head of speech therapy in Mulago. Precious, you must watch this. So I recall us going back home and introducing her to my son. And I was scared. I didn't know what would happen, whether she would run away from me, give up, because I knew how my son was. So I was not sure, but I handed it over to God. I prayed about it and I said, God, this is me trying. This is me trying. Please show me what to do. So that is where we started out. We started off on those, the picture exchange, like I had told you, where we just started taking pictures of different things in the home. My car, because of course he would always sit in my car, his bed, his food, the bathroom, the toilet, the basic things, clothes. So when it came to now communicating and engaging him, this was now the picture exchange therapy, because they told us you show him the picture and then you tell him what you're showing him, so that eventually he will be the one to come and show you the picture. But amazingly, like when I look at Yona's journal and what Precious had recorded then, I cannot believe that that is the same Yona. So I was thankful and I realized, okay, this is something good. This is something, I'm seeing some results out of it. Then I also visited a psychologist, but I don't think I got much out of that.
Yeah, but somebody might, huh?
Because you see, they recommended medication.
For you or for him?
For him. Because that time he was so hyper. He was so hyper. I remember when he started out in school, he never used to sit in the classroom. He would always wander around in the compound and they would just let him be. But she recommended some medication. But somehow your gut feel tells you, I cannot have my child on medication from an early age. I don't think this is right. So anyway, I kept on searching here and there. And that is how I landed on the Sunrise program. Like I had told you, when I met my colleague and she told me about this program, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is a good thing. Let's see how to try. I know it is far, far away in America, but let us see. Let us start little steps. And at that time you're like, America is so far away, these people might never call me. No one will reach out to me or anything like that. So I just registered and I requested for a call. And to my surprise, they called me. And the person on the phone on the other side was so pleasant, was so good. She was like, no, we can help you. Then I told them, but America is so far away. How will I get there? First of all, getting the ticket, getting the visa is an entire process. It's costly, it's everything. But she said, no, let us walk this thing together. Let's walk through it together. We can work on a sponsorship. We can work on this. So that search for information, search for help, that hope that you have in you is what led me to that. I know we're going to talk more and more about the therapies and all. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in America and attended the training. Maybe let me talk just a bit about the training before we wind up. So, on going there, of course, I was going to look for answers on how to help my son. On therapy, I'm like, okay, I am well equipped. I have my notes. I have my everything. I am ready. I am going to do this thing. Let me go and learn everything and I come back and implement. I remember I even told Precious, let me go and see what all this is about and I'll come back and we discuss. And then I got there and actually the therapy was for me. It was for me, the parent. So they really worked on us. They really encouraged us. They showed us what it is to accept your child as they are. They told us, this is who your child is. You can't separate your child from autism, so why not accept This is who your child is. Don't you love your child? Yes, I do. Then accept, because this is who he is. This is autism, so just love him and embrace him. That experience just changed me completely. It changed me completely. I came back a different person. I came back ready to roll. Of course, there's also that bit of the father was in denial, did not accept. He did not even believe this whole diagnosis, or even me going through the trouble of going for this training. So, but I came back well equipped, and I came back ready, and I accepted that that was him. He was not ready for it, but I was ready to roll with it.
Thank you. I think for somebody who's asking, why are they over talking about this coping and this what? Irene has said it well. It begins with you. It begins with the parent, the caregiver. If you don't accept and manage yourself, it's going to be an arduous, challenging journey. So we are going on about it. Manage yourself. Change your environment, change your view of the child, and meet them where they are. Just because they are not speaking or they seem to have behavior that's not usual, that's who they are, and they are communicating through that behavior, through those mannerisms you think are funny. There's something they're trying to communicate about their sensory feeling, the overwhelm they too are experiencing, trying to fit into our neurotypical world. So look at it and understand your child. Understand yourself, and then understand the child that you have and accept that. So we are going to go into more depth now into once you have that acceptance and you're equipping yourself, you've educated yourself, what do you do? We're going to talk about the interventions. So we shall move into the next part of this segment where we're going to discuss what would you be the immediate interventions that you would put in place.